Well, hello and welcome to our 5th episode in our series, Beyond Boundaries. Today we're going to touch on the topic of generative AI and machine learning with Hitachi. My name is David Chapa, market strategist for AI at Hitachi, and joining me is Jason Hardy, CTO of AI for Hitachi Vantara. Jason, this is going to be a very good discussion, one of my favorite topics. Thanks a lot for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for hosting this, David. Really excited about this conversation. Obviously, very topical, especially for this week.
Absolutely. I want to remind all the viewers that we do have a Q&A at the end. So if you want to submit your questions throughout this presentation, at the bottom of the presentation window, we'll do our best to get through every single one of them at the end. So before we get into it, I kind of want to set the table from a market perspective with just a very short history about AI, and then jump right into the transformative role that the GPU is playing and has played in our industry. So AI itself dates back to the mid-20th century when Alan Turing, who was a scientist and mathematician, published a paper called Computing Machinery and Intelligence. That was in 1950. And 5 years later, the proof of concept was demonstrated through a program called the Logic Theorist. Now, the Logic Theorist was a program funded by the RAND Corporation. It was designed to mimic human problem-solving skills. Now, over the decades since that initial investment, there has been like an ebb and flow in investment with AI. Those in the AI circles will call that AI springs and AI winters, denoting the high interest in hibernation in artificial intelligence. I would say that we are definitely in an AI spring, if you will, as we look at where we're at today. And thanks to the GPU work of two of the Stanford researchers from the mid-2000s, we are now able to really see the value of the GPUs in these computational workloads. What otherwise was reserved for the private labs and national labs is now accessible to the enterprise. And that's what we're going to talk about today. You know, I brought up this quote here by Alan Turing. I think it's one of the it's a defining quote for what we're going to talk about. He said this in 1947, where there's going to come a time when we're going to say that a computer can think for us and no one will contradict us. And in 1947, fast forward to where we are today in 2024, I think that no one would look at him and say he's crazy. and Jason, I think that brings me to the first question that I want to talk about is, you know, we look at the accessibility of artificial intelligence today, and you know, in our industry, the word democratization is used quite a lot. And so how do we look at that from an AI perspective when we think about the democratization of GPUs, for example?
Yeah, so obviously, like you said, democratization, very standard word. Really, though, when we apply it to AI, what has really happened here is AI has become almost a universally accessible technology. With that, obviously, through the evolution of that and now into the space that we're in and kind of the world that we live in today with the open AIs and all these other technologies of the world, it's really kind of created two effects from that. One is obviously the democratization of AI has created this massive lightning-paced innovation rush, where now that everyone has it accessible to them through APIs, through SDKs, through even what they can do in their own homes, it's now allowed for this massive innovation and this huge rush into like the potential is now really blossoming for what this technology actually means for us. It's also created, though, a bit of a FOMO, a fear of missing out, where it's like, great, I can create all the cat pictures I want, and I can help it have me write a research paper for my homework. But the enterprise side is like, wait a minute, there's something to this. Now I need to jump on board with it and wait a minute, what does this actually mean? But what we're seeing is that even the most conservative organizations are starting to think through what this actually transitions into and what it looks like for them to execute on. But I also think that we're seeing the repercussions of this as well. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of money being invested into AI projects that 80% of those projects end up failing at. So is it a wise investment? I mean, you can always say I'm learning something from it. But ultimately, though, if you were going to walk into something saying I have an 80% chance of failing, most people would kind of pump the brakes a little bit on that. We're seeing the opposite of that. And I think NVIDIA's stock price actually reflects that, now exceeding over $2 trillion, the third most valuable company in the world.
Right, absolutely.
Additionally, I think systems are being deployed and policies are being created, but we're also opening up ourselves to a little bit more liability here than what I think people are used to. I think the Air Canada example is perfect for that, where they signed up for something because their AI started hallucinating, and now they're liable for it. So the questions are starting to be asked, like, what does this actually mean? We're rushing into this FOMO side of it, and we're trying to innovate, but also how do we make this AI or enterprise ready so that we fully understand what's going, we can prove it as we need to legally and things like that. But then also, I don't want to miss out on what my competition might actually be positioning themselves for.
Right, exactly. And I think you kind of led into the next question. You know, AI is great, and I think the vision for what AI can deliver the enterprise is absolutely on par with what the business is looking for. But with that come a host of potential challenges, right? So what are some of the challenges that we're faced with from an AI perspective as we look at, you know, this being accessible to everybody?
Yeah, I think obviously, like I said, through the democratization, we've created a rush. That rush or influx of AI is now seeing where, hey, to effectively use this thing, it takes a different skill set. For example, I read this great article where prompt engineers are being paid $900,000 a year, plus being given access to over 10,000 GPUs. And in order to try to hire those people, you need something better. And unfortunately, these massive enterprises like Meta is creating this ecosystem where all this innovation can be created, absolutely, but it's not able to spread the wealth around or to kind of like give that skills, the ability to kind of permeate into the market to where it becomes more commonplace, like a DBA would or something like that. So that becomes very hard to compete with. But it's more than just a skills gap problem. Obviously, you need data scientists and you need prompt engineers and you need an ability to actually understand what this technology means, not just from like the raw capabilities of it, but how you interface it into your more global ecosystem of tooling or applications. But there's also the side of it where it's like, again, Meta just bought 10,000 GPUs. That means that a bunch of other customers can't get those GPUs, so they have to wait. So now there becomes this gap in even being able to innovate in-house. So you're being forced into using either proprietary platforms or kind of different approaches to try to address that question. And a lot of that's good. Like, for example, the cloud has created this fantastic place to start to execute inside of and to experiment within and kind of do something without being committed to the infrastructure spend. But additionally to that, there's things like, what about the data? What about the controls that we need to wrap around it? What about guardrails? What about all of the crises on the edge that can be created through the bringing of this data in or bringing of these solutions in, and to avoid things like that garbage in, garbage out problem? Great, I have all this data, I'm going to feed it into the thing, and then I hope I get the right answer out at the end of it. But really what it's turning into is like, now I've created an unnatural bias or I've created an unintentional effect that needs to be addressed. When do we catch that? How often are we able to accommodate for that? That's where, again, these gaps and these challenges start to happen, because we're going headlong into something that, to be honest, we don't actually fully understand yet. We just know that, hey, there's a really cool pot of gold at the end of it, but what does it take to actually get there? And what are the mines that are along the way that we could get tripped up inside of?
I think you hit something that's very interesting. When we talk about using GPUs, we're not talking about one or two. we're talking about a farm of GPUs. I saw an article recently. The Meta 10,000. I think there's another one I saw where there was 16,000. We saw Elon Musk that pre-ordered 10,000. Even those that have been the OpenAI Chat GPT users have the experience of getting the message saying, please try again later. There's not enough resources. And we all know what that means, right? There's not enough GPUs available. And I think the market shift, like you said, the cat pictures, the developing things, it's really cool. But from a commerce perspective, from a business perspective, what makes generative AI so big today, and how does it differ from AI? You know me, I have my own opinion of this, but I want to get your perspective as the CTO for AI at Hitachi Vantara.
Yeah, absolutely. So generative AI, in a nutshell, because you could spend hours on this, people spend their careers on this, is really the next evolution of this whole machine learning journey. Like you said earlier and opened up with, Alan Turing created this very unique concept that was a machine-informed decision. That led to artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence led to generative artificial intelligence. The simple difference, to kind of boil that down, is the fact that we've gone from a reactionary technology being like, hey, I am a robot and I have to look for all the red soup cans on a conveyor belt and move them to the right pallet or the right thing. So it's, hey, I've trained it on an image, I've trained it on the ability to understand this can is dented, pitch it, or hey, this is a blue can, it goes over there, this is a red can. That's all reactionary stuff. That is traditional AI, and it's all about automation, data analysis, decision support, things like that. Generative AI, this ability now into creation. And what I mean by that is, for example, I can go into generative AI, into ChatGPT. I pay my $21 a month, so I don't get the, sorry, we're busy right now. And I can say, write me a poem about AI or about something. And it does it. It has not been trained on what poetry is per se, or what itself is per se, but it's been given this generalized level of information, this knowledge, and now it's been designed to create a new concept or a new idea or a new piece of content based on a general understanding of the environment. So what that means from an enterprise perspective is, again, the same thing, moving from a reactionary standpoint to a creationary standpoint, being say, hey, guess what? I can use this massive amount of data and these tools like RAG to start to understand and process and summarize, for example, information. I did this really cool experiment where I told OpenAI, go summarize Hitachi's last 10K report. And inside of 2 sentences, it summarized who we are as a company very effectively. At the same time, you can tell it to create art, or you can tell it to create a new graphics logo or code. We've used it to create code to simplify the creation of software. It's through these new mechanisms that generative AI has again gone from this reactionary, show me all the red soup cans, into, hey, I need to build a new product, or I need to create a new thing. Help me kind of cut through a lot of the process that it takes to get to the endpoint. Now, is it perfect? Absolutely not. I wrote code for a project. I used Gen AI to help me get to that point. And it was about 75 to 80% there. But the good news is like that 75 to 80% cuts through the noise of what you would traditionally spend from an R&D perspective, or from an energy going into this from a development side. So there's a lot of capabilities that this starts to create, especially when we start to look at it from how it can improve on our ability to be more efficient at what we do.
Right. And I guess, the viewers have already figured this out, but we are essentially in an AI world right now as we're recording this. So much of what everyone's seeing is, besides the slides and the two of us, is generated, right? This is an AI virtual world that we've entered into for this webinar.
Absolutely.
I don't want to get in too deep in this, because we could do a whole nother segment on this, but we talked about the challenges of AI before, and I think one of the things you mentioned, I didn't double click on, I should have, it is about the data, right? So using the AI platform to cleanse your data so that you have good outcomes for your AI training is vitally important. Can you just touch on that for 45 seconds, and then I want to really get into what industries are finding the most impact with this.
Absolutely. So it's funny, it's like we even had this conversation earlier, is like we're getting to the point where obviously we want to avoid this garbage in, garbage out problem. There are technologies in AI to help us identify data, again, on that reactionary side, that then can help us move into properly training and tuning our large language models on the generative AI side for a better quality output. So it turns into this, hey, I need AI to do better AI. And those are a lot of the principles, if we go back to the core of what Hitachi has been from a data perspective, from a data company, is having functionality like that to say, hey, I can better label my data. I can create better indices around my data. I can create catalogs and capabilities to understand what data I have to properly feed it into the thing. And then we use a lot of AI to be able to evaluate, tune, correct for that, and then use that as kind of I hate to say it, but almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's we're using what AI is saying is good because we told it that's good. And then that's feeding into now what AI is creating for us, because again, that's what is good.
Yeah. It's going to be, it's a very interesting progression. It's very different. I know some people align AI with what we saw in the big data phenomenon, but it's very, very different from that.
Correct.
We got the large language models, the small language models. We have the importance of cleansing the data. And I always say that the biggest enemy or threat to good AI is noisy data.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
What industries, and I've got a couple in my head, but what industries are you seeing adopt AI today from a Gen AI perspective, let's say, and finding good success with the adoption?
I wouldn't say it's any one specific industry. It is all of them. They are all looking at it today, even the mission critical. And this is a lot of where Hitachi comes into play, of how generative AI specifically can improve on them. Think of it this way. I go to my bank, I interface with customer service. Most of the time that starts as a bot. That's a customer service virtual agent. And at GTC, we showcased that capability of having a virtual customer service agent to help me solve a problem, something quick. Obviously, that alleviates the burden that it puts on a call center or a customer service environment. That is across all industries. That is, I don't want to call it ubiquitous, but that is a very common use case. Additionally, there are things like how can HR or how can finance or how can these horizontal business units inside of organizations better create an output. Marketing, for example, you can create great copy from a Gen AI output and utilize tools even created by Adobe and others, and NVIDIA. Look at the set that we're living in right now, to create a targeted marketing environment or something like that. So these tools are, again, very horizontally focused. What we're starting to see, though, is that we start to get more at the top end of these industries, and we start to look at vertical-centric solutions. For example, and then again, this is where Hitachi's hyper-focused at, is how we can use these technologies to improve on the industrial markets that we work inside of. For example, obviously, like Hitachi builds trains. How can we use generative AI to improve on the train ecosystem? Whether through simulation of data, whether through better automation, whether through XYZ. There's a ton of potential wrapped around that. And we see that in industry by industry by industry. And that is a lot of what the announcement is on the back of that we're doing with the likes of NVIDIA and across our greater Hitachi organization, and what our product lines are specifically targeting from an IQ initiative. Hitachi IQ is entirely designed around that top-down approach of how do we answer these questions to be more specific to industry, while we're also solving for a lot of the more horizontally defined solutions that are already in play today, and how we can improve on them, make them better, make them more mature, and create a better result. Again, preventing the Air Canada and getting sued because of a fake policy that was created by a hallucination.
Right. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about Hitachi IQ and this launch. You know, the big question I think is, why are we entering this particular portfolio strategy?
So what we're in this for is to leverage our unique position to help our customers better along the AI journey. We already talked about earlier, there is a rush to buy infrastructure. And traditionally, these infrastructure providers are like, hey, buy a bunch of GPUs and you'll figure out what to do with them later, but you need to buy them now. That way you're not waiting a year and a half or whatever it turns into from a lead time perspective. So we're still seeing that wave is still going, and there is, again, $2 trillion company today. Now, the move, though, from our perspective is beyond infrastructure. Obviously, infrastructure is a huge piece of it. But what we're really going after is the what can AI do for me question. And that is entirely solution-oriented to ensure that we help our customers discover that answer, and more importantly, chart a journey through it. Again, that top-down approach of solving the problem and then how do we get there, not saying here's a bunch of infrastructure, let's start from there. And this really goes into play with our, like I said, our unique end-to-end capability where, hey, Hitachi is the only company on the planet that can sell you a nuclear power plant or a bullet train and a hard drive at the same time. So that unique position gives us this perspective now in industry of how we can do things like, what does mission critical AI look like? It's one thing to have a cat picture generated. It's another thing to say, hey, I've got AI involved in control systems for a power plant or for a wastewater treatment facility or for a train. These are mission critical environments that we're focusing on and how we create actual tangible outcomes from that. And then obviously going beyond that is how we can better solve that more efficiently to get past that 8 out of 10 projects fail.
You triggered something when you was talking there. Really, how does hybrid cloud, because it's not just about infrastructure.
Absolutely.
You know, when we think of infrastructure, we think hardware, we think pallets and plugs, as I call it. But infrastructure means more than that today.
Absolutely.
It also means the cloud. So how does the hybrid cloud fit into this strategy?
Yeah. So Hitachi Vantara's whole goal is to be the #1 hybrid cloud solution provider in the market. People, like you said, traditionally think like, hey, hybrid cloud, that means my GPU's in the cloud, right? Actually, no, that's like the smallest end of it. What we're finding is most of our customers have gone through kind of what I call 3 phases of whiplash. Whiplash #1 was moving from the data center to 100% cloud. And then they said whiplash #2 is I need to go from the 100% cloud. Wow, that was way too much. I need to start going back to the data center. And then whiplash #3 was like, you know what? We're actually somewhere kind of in the middle. And then we kind of find that happy medium. Hitachi IQ is entirely intended around meeting the customer where they're at. Obviously, things like NVIDIA AI Enterprise and these other frameworks are software. And NVIDIA being everywhere makes it easy to adopt these solutions to wherever they need to execute. So if your GPU infrastructure is in a cloud environment, great. Absolutely. From a software perspective, Hitachi IQ is designed to solve solutions, not necessarily be infrastructure 100% of the time. Now, it goes beyond that, though, again, like I said, from the GPU perspective. Most of our customers' data, and again, Hitachi Vantara is a data company, is located in either the cloud or on-prem. Those are the 2 options. So us aligning from a hybrid cloud perspective is us saying, listen, customer, we will meet you where you're at, help you understand what your data looks like and how to execute and create, again, that more effective AI solution, but then help you evolve over time to creating that roadmap and working with you continuously, so that as you realize, or as you kind of gain a different level of awareness of what should live where and how you want to execute, that we can meet you in that journey and move forward from there. So Hitachi IQ, yes, is infrastructure. We partner with NVIDIA on the DGX. We're building out our own GPU platforms for mid-range and for entry and all of this stuff, again, all around kind of that NVIDIA ecosystem. But it goes beyond that and saying we can solve problems through solutions anywhere. And that is in the cloud, on-prem, somewhere in the middle. But again, it's all about how we can meet our customers' requirements and even do a quicker time to solution by saying, yeah, let's start in the cloud and then kind of figure out what to do from there. But ultimately, it's about saying, hey, customer, we're here to support you. Let's move forward from there and not get wrapped around the axle of how many GPUs you need to buy.
I think that's a great answer. That we could go on for hours, and you and I actually have in other conversations. But we got to wrap it up. I want to go to Q&A and try to respond to some of the questions we have coming in through the chat.
I'd also like just a quick plug real quick too. We have you're going to get a note, just everyone, about AI Insiders or Hitachi IQ Insiders. This is a very elite club for everyone to be able to keep an update and an awareness of what we're doing in this space. I highly recommend you all sign up for it. We're going to do a lot more of these events and things like that. But there's a ton of information on top of what we've talked about today to reinforce a lot of this and a lot of other perspectives that we're bringing from our executive team and things like that. So please pay attention for that. You'll see that. And like you said, Chapa, let's jump into the questions.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, we are now live. Jason's live at GTC, and I'm live from my recording studio here in Colorado. So, Jason, what a great discussion on this market, especially given this week and the announcements. We've got a lot of questions that I want to get into, and I think the one that is pretty interesting, I like this, how it starts out. Given NVIDIA's own announcement today about the advancement in the GPU chips, what else do we anticipate in the near future, and how could it impact the acceleration of AI and generative AI and those workloads? Well,
I mean, obviously the big thing to this week at GTC and what Jensen had talked about with the release of the new B series, the platform, is it's all about being faster, better, stronger, obviously, but also about being more environmentally conscious about what it takes to actually create these outcomes. Additionally, though, they talk about it's a lot of bandwidth flowing between all the GPU processors. But what about the data that needs to flow into the GPU processors? So there's a lot of work that will need to start to take place to improve on how we're utilizing information, how we're flowing information in and out. And in that will be also what needs to happen before we start to access that data to ensure that we can efficiently and properly process it, and also flood more and more information into it to create a more valued output out of it. Additionally, with that, I think we're going to see is the tooling around it, like the NIMS concept, unbelievable. Right. Is how things are packaged now to be delivered inside of the new AI enterprise evolution and capabilities that have been brought out there. Is we're going to see an injection of a lot more capabilities to bring solutions to market faster, which is our whole goal, as well as obviously how to optimize as much as possible so that you can get the biggest bang for buck without obviously sacrificing on quality.
Right. I thought one of the interesting things too, I've been following the semiconductor space for several years now, and I had heard that the 3 nanometer is really where NVIDIA wanted to go. I was really surprised, intrigued, and blown away that they came out with a 4 nanometer chip and I call it the Oreo cookie, because you've got 2, right? And you got that high speed bandwidth in between the 2. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I think when the 3 nanometer fabs are becoming more and more available, I think it's going to really just change the whole landscape of this market. We got another question that just came in. Is Hitachi IQ available worldwide?
Absolutely. So obviously, all the markets that Hitachi Vantara is involved in is where IQ is available. Obviously, with some exception, we understand from a trade embargo perspective and things like that, there's some complexities around some of the GPU capabilities. But obviously, that aside, yes, globally available. We have a specialist sales organization that's kicking off April 1st as our new year starts. That will be able to work with our partners and with our customers directly in addressing their AI challenges, concerns, and then obviously bringing IQ to market across all those different geos.
Excellent. Another question from a viewer: how important are the economies of scale in making Gen AI more accessible to mid and small-scaled enterprises? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said earlier, is like it's important for everyone. It's not a top 5, top 10, Fortune 10 type technology. And I think that's a lot of where the cloud and things like that have made, and open source capabilities have made, listen, I can make that barrier to entry as low as possible, and then allow for the uptick of capabilities around that. And that, again, is Hitachi IQ's entire premise. People say, well, this sounds like an on-prem infrastructure solution, things like that. It's that and more. Obviously, there's a lot of markets that can't utilize cloud services for data sovereignty issues or whatever it is, and so they require an on-prem capability. But a lot of IQ, again, is not just the infrastructure side of it, it's the solutioning side of it. And with the ubiquity of NVIDIA, utilizing their software stack and their capabilities across the hyperscaler ecosystems and even the mid-tier environments, it's about bringing solutions that are fit for everyone, because everyone has the same challenges. It's just a volume problem, really, depending on the size you're at. So making sure that we can help the doctor's office in the mall to the Fortune 10 organization that's investing billions of dollars into this. Again, it's a gap. It's not about how can we bring infrastructure to a solution. It's about how can we solve the AI scenario with the proper tools, and then obviously fitting inside the customer's requirements.
Great. That actually loops right into the next question. This viewer says, this sounds like an on-premises hardware software solution. So how does a platform work in a hybrid cloud model?
We have to realize that hybrid cloud doesn't mean your infrastructure is in the cloud. Hybrid cloud means that you're utilizing cloud services for a portion of your business. So that could be sourcing data, that could be a data lake, that could be a PaaS environment that's doing processing for a certain portion of your workload, or again, however that will. The point is that whether you're running AI in the cloud or you're running AI on-prem, it's about supporting the customer where they're at, and then being able to create, again, the solutions to align to those business requirements. So if I have a customer who has a massive EMR environment in the cloud, great. There's a ton of data in there that's going to be very valuable to the success of an AI solution. So it's about tapping into those data sources and then being able to drive the outcomes from that as a part of what that pipeline looks like. Additionally, it could be, you know what, we don't have any infrastructure environment. Great. Then we can absolutely work. And like you saw from Jensen's talk, is like the hyperscalers are massively investing in this technology and are continuing to. And again, the point is that it's the software wrapped around it and being able to bring those solutions to market wherever they need to run. But realizing it can be on-prem, it can be in the cloud. We're not fighting the cloud. We're saying, listen, we're aligning with our customers and where their requirements are, and then driving from there.
Yeah, it's not an either or, it's an and.
Correct.
And I'm seeing a lot of customers, they're still going through this journey of how I'm going to use the data on premises and how I'm going to distribute the data in the cloud. And I think that was a great answer. I want to remind everyone, keep on bringing your questions, asking your questions. We're going to try to get to every single one of them before we end here. We talked about the NVIDIA announcement. We talked about this Oreo cookie that they've come out with. This has got the potential, and not the potential, it actually has got the ability to ingest a great deal of data. So they've essentially built an Autobahn for data. Now we got to make sure we have a vehicle that can tip those speeds, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about the data platforms and as they evolve, what are we doing, or what's the market doing to keep pace with the complexity and the size and the variability of the data in an AI, ML, generative AI training models?
I mean, so at GTC this week, we see it everywhere. Everyone is trying to create that solution to help the data journey for this. So it's what we can do from an ETL perspective. Yes, going back to even to the ETL days of like what we can do from a normalization of data even before we need to start to address it. And then what we can do to pre-process as much, or is to prep the data and cleanse the data as much as possible. That is as much of the journey as, hey, I need to build the chatbot thingy or whatever around it. So and especially again, going back to like our foundation being around data, it's about what you do beforehand. What's the saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It's the work you do in front of it is more important than what you're doing with it, so that you can accelerate, and so you can have normalized, and you can have the best efficiency possible, so you're not wasting cycles. But it's a lot of experimentation as well. Again, we're at the forefront of this market and what this industrial revolution is really creating. So we're going to see a lot of new processes and new ways to do it, to where, I mean, even like vector databases. I was talking to some guys, like long form vectors now, like you're not having to do chunking anymore, and that possibility. I'm like, wait a minute here. That's like that whole like blows your mind on like the concepts wrapped around that. So again, we're seeing a lot of like, what can we do from, again, supporting technology efficiencies, but also what we can do on like that data process, that pre-processing pipeline and what's necessary for that. And then obviously what needs to happen from just an infrastructure perspective to just go as fast as possible. Realize though too, like what NVIDIA showed today is not everyone is going to have that. There's no need for that in a lot of places. It's going to be scaled back from there. But it's about, again, finding where that entry point is, what makes sense, and then starting along that journey and then saying, yeah, absolutely, you can have the Ferrari, but you can start with the baby Ferrari and then grow it out from there, as, again, that demand requires. And it also ensures, and it's the whole point of IQ, is ensuring that there's no overspend in it, so that, again, we're running as efficiently as possible from an economics perspective, as well as all the supporting technology to be able to like utilize this stuff as best as possible.
Yeah, good answer. I have a friend that owns a Bugatti, and I asked him if he's ever taken it and gotten a top speed. He said, "Oh, absolutely not. We have speed limits around here."
Well, great, you own a slow Bugatti.
Yeah. So just I summarized that last question. So if I didn't get that right, ask it again, and I'll read it verbatim. But I think I got the gist of it. Another one just came in about case studies. We have case studies or examples of industries that have been transformed by adopting GPU-driven data platforms for AI and generative AI applications.
Yeah. So if we look at what we're doing from a big Hitachi perspective, absolutely. It's not a thing that like one individual piece says, great, we can solve this problem. So if we look at it from a bigger perspective, absolutely, we have case studies. We've done things like predictive maintenance platforms. We have case studies around what we've done with fault detection environments or guided repair systems, or again, start to fill out the blank, especially in a lot of manufacturing and things like that. So from our perspective, very much so, case studies of success, case studies of what we've been even researching since the 90s in this technology. Hitachi's been in this for a very long time. Right. So from a case study perspective, yes, many of them. In your specific, answering a specific question or the field that you're in or things like that. Obviously it varies depending on where we've been engaged in, but yeah, we have a lot of success and a lot of active projects and a lot of engagement from what we're seeing from our customers. So very much so.
So whoever, we already lost the question, but whoever asked that question, reach out to us and we can get you case studies by industry, and maybe even some of your peers, competitors that are using it. There's been a lot of, I'll call it posturing this week with a lot of announcements from a lot of companies. So this question is, how is Hitachi IQ different from the other solutions in NVIDIA's SuperPod program?
So obviously, SuperPod is around what you're doing from a storage perspective and powering these massive scale DGX environments. And let's just take it from a generalized approach perspective. There is a massive amount of optimization that has been brought into what we're doing from a storage perspective to drive the DGX better so that we can have a higher output coming from it, keep your GPUs as busy as possible, 20x boost in performance, while also lowering the environmental impact from just a carbon footprint perspective. So what would be 10 racks of equipment, I can do in 1 rack of equipment from a storage perspective and things like that. So obviously it's all about how it's being utilized and what's happening there. But from our perspective, because we're taking a fresh look at this, and because again, we're saying, listen, our storage technology itself is entirely different and it's new and it's efficient, and with that obviously comes a lot of benefit. So again, it's all that's wrapped around that from just about how we're addressing the question and solving for what's there.
Great. This is a great question, and I like that it comes back to, where the rubber meets the road. This question is, how can AI help a luxury retail service provider? Most are manufacturing and not so much services.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's some amazing examples out there of just how things like recommender systems at the very base, you have a trend about what your customer looks at when they browse your site or how you interface with them. And then obviously being able to target them a bit more in a more effective way. It sounds a bit like mean, but it's like how you can provide them more relevant experience around your brand. Or there's really cool things like, hey, I can create your entire catalog of goods in virtual space and then allow for them to interact with saying, hey, I want to see the blue version of this, and I want to see this with a lady wearing a red dress or whatever. And you can, through a generative experience of just simple engagements like that, can actually create an interface into helping customers make buying decisions around your brand with just simple prompts and simple guidance on how it is a customer want to see this viewed, what's the best position possible for your product, how would you like for them to engage with it, and then kind of meeting the customer into that space and creating a very interactive way for them to purchase, especially when we see a lot more online retail taking place now. It's like, how can you create that in-store experience online? And a lot of that is through being able to customize how they view it, how they engage with the content online, and creating a really unique custom experience for them. And that can all be done in virtual space. I don't want to say very easily, but very effectively, and obviously in an accelerated manner.
Well, it's all about the data, right? So looking at the data, looking at the geography, looking at location, looking at price points,
trending,
all that stuff can be used in an AI training model to provide the customer. And again, this is what AI is going to deliver from a retail perspective, is a better customer experience.
Exactly.
And I think that's the key there, is leveraging the data you've been collecting all these years, and now really monetizing that to provide your customers a better experience in a more, almost like a concierge service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And also to design what the next thing is for your customer. So
Right. Yep. Yeah, I agree.
hey, I know that we're running long. I got to make a quick plug again. AI Insiders, Hitachi IQ Insiders. There's a link in the attachments to this webinar. Please sign up for it. You'll get a lot of great information, especially as we evolve this along. And I know there's a lot more questions. We'll make sure we address those. I think we can capture these and take them out. But I just want to take a quick plug for that. And if you're at GTC this week, come stop by. See us. I'd love to meet you guys. We're booth 308. Make an immediate left once you come into the main entrance there, and you'll see us on the end there. But yeah, super happy to meet with you all. And yeah, it's some exciting times right now.
Excellent. Jason, thanks a lot. This has been good. Enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same. We're melting away with the snow we got last week. So enjoy the sunshine and enjoy the tech that's out there and all the new things you're learning about what this market has for us. And like Jason said, we will get to the rest of the questions. We can capture them. We'll get back to you. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I hope this was helpful to you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.